everyone, I'm Luke Hector and you're watching The Broken Meeple. This is a YouTube channel about board games where I give reviews, top 10s and my honest opinions, regardless of the consequences.
Get on with it.
So on today's episode, we're taking a look at a pretty small card game, the Isle of Trains, all aboard. And yeah, you know me and train games. Get out! Get out of there! Yeah, it's a little worrying for some people to give me any game that involves the word trains on it, and understandably so. But, you know, there are some on my shelf which are train games, and lighter train games I can get behind, just not the really heavy stuff like Imperial Steam, Age of Steam, and 18XX. All of those can burn in hell for as far as I'm concerned.
Wow! That was pretty brutal even by my standards.
But little light ones I'm still fine with, particularly if the fact that it's a train theme doesn't really matter too much. Now this is based off an old board game called Isle of Trains. Well, I say old, I think it's 2014 odd. Now I never played that game, didn't even know it existed. So frankly, this review isn't going to have no basis from that. This is its own separate thing. It's a portable card game version with a little twist. I think the passengers it adds is new from the original one, but I'm just going to rate this based on it and it alone. So Isle of Trains is essentially a full card game, and to kind of compare it to other games, it's a bit like San Juan and Race for the Galaxy, in which the deck of cards kind of consists of everything in the game. It's your currency, it's also your trains, it's also, you know, the cargo that you can do. And San Juan had a similar thing. You know, the card deck was the buildings you could play, it was the coins in order to purchase the buildings, it was also the tobacco and the indigo that you put under the buildings. And I like games that can simulate all these different things with just simply a deck of cards. I think kind of just sort of works for me. So the general premise here is that you have a map layout on the board, which just consists of a few location cards, and everybody starts with their own level 1 engine. It gives you a capacity for how big your train can be, but it also has a cost, a victory point value, and a little special ability, but it is your basic starting engine. And then what happens from this point is that the rest of the game is dictated basically by a bunch of cards from a deck, which essentially are all these different types of trains that you can do. So you can do tankers, you can do, let's see, a coach, cabooses, you can upgrade your engine, you can have what's the ones that deliver coal? I'm trying to find some examples here. Hoppers and such, boxcars. But then you can also get buildings such as Northern Station, a coal factory, a bank. You know, these are all things that you can build, and these are all things that you can add to your train while also upgrading it. But during a round, you essentially have two actions that you can do from a very simplified list of actions, basically to take cards, build stuff from your hand, load stuff from your hand onto your train or other people's trains, more on that in a minute, or to deliver to various locations for bonuses, points made, you know, and all sorts like that. But you basically take two of those actions and then next player. Two actions, next player. Two actions, next player. Super fast, but it's all these cards. So for example, if I want to build from my hand, you know, a particular car, I need to say, right, well, I want to build this level 1 tanker here. Cost 2. Right, well, I need to bin 2 cards. There you go. Don't get too attached to your hand now, because a lot of it you're going to be chucking away for money. But what you can also do is load your cargo on your train. So for example, all of these cards have got a particular cargo icon on them for coal, iron, coal, oil, and boxes, I guess just goods in a sense. And the idea is that if you have the matching type, you can basically load it onto a cart as long as it's got enough capacity for it. Now, if you load it onto your own train, you can deliver it to a place and fulfill contracts for points and places for bonuses. But you can also put them on someone else's train. If somebody else happens to have a particular train, let's say someone's got a level 3 engine there and happens to also have something that I can put oil into, then if I put it into their train, I get to trigger the bonus on the top of the card, which could give me more cards, it could give me more cool stuff. The downside is you're giving your opponent something to work with. So you gotta balance that out. You know, do I really need this bonus? And if so, who am I more willing to give something to? Preferably whoever's losing. But again, who's that person, and do they have something that can even fit what you want to do? But you also have passengers, and I think this is a new aspect for all aboard. This is a deluxe version of the game. You normally just get tokens, but other than that, there's not a huge amount of difference between the deluxe version and the retail version. But in this one, you get cool screen printed meeples, which I think are pretty cool actually. I mean, the tokens are fine, but these are pretty nice and they do feel good in the hand and they do look the part. But what you can do is that you can deliver them to these various locations, and there are ticket tiles. Where have those ticket tiles gone? Here we go. where you shuffle a bunch of them up, you dish them out randomly at the start of the game, and basically each city is color-coded, so you might have to deliver this orange one to here, and this one in particular gets you more passengers and more cards, but they're basically more ways to get points and cool stuff. So that was a slightly long-winded explanation, and certainly the game is not the quickest to explain. I know it's a simple case of, oh, you've just got the 2 actions here, but this isn't probably what I would call a gateway level game. It's definitely light, but a new gamer might struggle with a few concepts here, particularly as with these actions, there are a couple of little edge cases you need to be aware of. That being said, the rules are pretty straightforward. I had no trouble learning from the rulebook when I first played this, and you do get a nice linen finished rulebook with a rules reference on the back of it, as well as, you know, how endgame scoring works and such. But it may look like a longish rulebook, but bearing in mind, that chunk is basically the solo mode. More on that in a minute. The main rules, there's not a huge amount of them, and there's a decent amount of balance between text on the page and pictorial examples. Honestly, I learned the game fairly easily from this. It's a good little condensed rulebook. But then, these reference cards. This is near perfect for what I want to see on reference cards, okay? Firstly, tells you all the actions that you can do, and pretty much all you need to know about each action, with 1 or 2 little edge cases that it doesn't mention, but you know, you can't fit everything on there. Like I said, near perfect. But then on the back, reminds you of the endgame scoring and gives you the card anatomy. Yes, it's on the back of the rulebook as well, but I never see this on reference cards. You never see something that explains what the symbology is on the cards, and here it's critical that you know what is what. So the fact that it tells you on the back of your reference card is brilliant. Kudos, this took some thought, okay? This took thought, and I praise you for it. Very good little reference cards. But the artwork itself is very nice. It's very nice and colourful. I mean, it's not like, you know, we're not necessarily talking like Vintage Detroit Michael Menzel here, but I think the artwork here pops off the cards. It's very colourful. It definitely looks nice on the table when you've got the map and everybody's trains laid out. It turns heads. People sort of look at it and go, ooh, this is very pretty. I'm intrigued. Particularly if you've got the deluxe version with these meeples. As I say, I'm more interested in the retail version from a review standpoint, but honestly, the tokens look pretty good as well. They're cardboard, they've got little artwork on them, and they are decent enough quality. So, you know, it's just whether you want to spend, what, an extra $5 or something? I don't think there's a huge price difference between retail and deluxe.
Shut up and take my money!
And this game feels very snappy. I mean, you have 2 actions in a turn. That's it. Just 2. And you pick out of 4. You might have a slightly elongated deliver action where you go to a location, you can deliver all 4 of the potential things that you could deliver. But that is extremely rare. In fact, I'm not even certain that's physically possible to do. It probably is, but you would have to work to it. And even then, it's not that long. So you're talking quick and snappy. Whether you're taking cards, building cards, loading cards, or delivering cards and passengers, it's all snappy. So even when you play this at the max count of 4 players, it doesn't take that long for the turn to get back round to you. Now, is it better with less players? That's a little trickier to explain, really, because there's an up and a downside here. Yes, if you play with less players, you don't take as long and the game is shorter. I've played this with 2 players and it works really, really well. But then I've also enjoyed my time with 4 players, because when you have more players, yes, you add a little bit of extra time to the game, but it really isn't that much. I mean, this game should not take you more than 75 minutes, I'd say, to play. It's a 75-minute game tops, really. As much as the box seems to claim 60 minutes, I'd say, yeah, even with a slow player, 4 players, including the teacher, probably talking 90 minutes max, but you can get this done quickly, particularly with less players. But when you have more players, you have more trains. So here's my train, here's another person's train, here's somebody else's train. All these different things that you can load up for their special bonuses. So suddenly when you're thinking, right, well, I need a cool bonus, I need to load some cargo in that, you've got all the 3 other players to look at. And it's like, ooh, okay, this looks pretty juicy. And that's maybe what causes a slight bit of AP with players, the fact that they can look at all these different trains, but most of the time people are pretty quick to realize whether they should or not. But that means the game has a decent sense of interaction. Again, doesn't have to be, I play this card and I punch you in the face, haha, it sucks to be you. That's not what I mean by player interaction when I talk about this a lot. I mean that I should care about other players being in the game. I reviewed stuff like Planet Unknown and some other games lately where the players being in the game, like Revive for example, where I couldn't care less what the other players were doing. They're like, oh, there's some tiny little aspect that means I care slightly about another player, whoopee-doo. This isn't a tiny aspect, this is a fundamental part of the game. I want to see whether you're going to deliver passengers to certain places. I need to check that you're not likely to nick a contract before I do. But on top of that, the fact that you're giving cards to other people and people are giving them to you influences what they do on their turn. It can influence what you do in your turn. Suddenly I've got an oil in my thing that I didn't have before. And it's like, oh, what can I do with this now if I had this? It makes you rethink your turn slightly. That's good player interaction.
Nobody wants to play with me.
Now, you can play this solo. Solo has a challenge mode where you pretty much play the game entirely the same way as multiplayer, except that you get the benefits from the trains when you put them on your own train, because obviously it's just you. That's a really cool addition, because frankly, if you didn't get that in solo mode, it would be a pretty lackluster mode. But the fact that you get to trigger all these cool abilities is paramount, basically. But you also have a bunch of scenarios in the book where it changes the setup slightly and gives you, rather than having you beat your own score, it gives you a condition. So I have to fill at least 5 ticket tiles with their corresponding passengers. Okay, so it's not a case of I need 60 points or anything. I mean, you could do a beat your own score, but I couldn't care less. But the idea that it's like, right, when I play this scenario, I need to really go heavy on passengers. So as I'm building my train and going to various locations and that, I'm thinking more about getting a lot of coaches. You know, I don't need oil and coal and, tankers like that. I need a bunch of coaches. I need high capacity passengers. Can I build a train long enough to do that? Do I have to get some particular cabooses with their special abilities? Maybe a building that gives me points for endgame scoring, which is what they typically are. You know, there's a lot of different ways that the scenarios make you change your playstyle, and it makes the solo mode here particularly really solid.
Screw you guys, I'm going home.
Now it can get a little bit busy on some of the cards with the iconography. I mean, yes, you do have a reference card to tell you the anatomy, but you have some iconography that repeats in certain places, which throws people off. But I mean, you've got the victory point value, the cost, what cargo it is, what ability it has, what capacity it has, what weight it adds to your train. There's quite a lot sort of staring at you on some of these cards, and so that can get a little bit busy at times. Also, you are going to need the rulebook reference nearby, not because of the rule set, but because of the buildings and the cabooses. They've all got different abilities, and the iconography is not 100% intuitive on them. Now, all of them are explained in the book. Great. And I don't really expect you to have a reference card in a game package this small to explain all of them, but you are going to need this book nearby to explain what all the engines in that do. Which, granted, they put everything in here, so you will not have an FAQ moment with any card in this game. It's all perfectly well explained in here. But you are going to need this nearby, so bear that in mind. So Isle of Trains is just a really solid package at the end of the day. It's small, compact, but it has a good amount of depth. It has easy to learn rules, easy to teach rules, with maybe a couple of edge cases that get in the way, like, make certain that when you do bonus actions, you can't load on other people's trains. It's not on the reference card. Some people can miss that out, but there's small little niggles like that. It's a relatively quick setup. It's not a long game to play. I will willingly play this at every player count in the box, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Yes, I think solo and free player are the sweet spots, but 2 and 4 is still solid. And there's a lot of games lately where I don't have that opinion, where player scaling is always a massive issue. Here, it's not. This game just does a lot of things right. Short, with up to 4 players, a good solo mode. I'll probably play this solo more than I will multiplayer, but that's just because of how quick and snappy it is. But I like this whole San Juan deck is everything mechanic. It's just a concept I really like. I think it's quite clever. I have good decisions to make, and I have cool little bits of interaction with other players about giving them stuff to use. It's a solid game. I'm giving this a 9 out of 10. It deserves a seal of distinction, and it deserves any accolades that it's had already. It's just really solid. I urge you to give this one a try if you're into small box card games, because I think you'll enjoy it. Don't worry about the fact that it's about trains if that puts you off, because you are talking to the person here who is the poster child of being put off by train games, and even I'm telling you to go grab this for a 9 out of 10. So if that doesn't speak volumes, I don't know what will.
Drinks?
So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please remember, thumb it up on YouTube, but also thumb it up on Board Game Geek when the review goes live on there. Don't forget to check out more content on the show, including all the other UK Games Expo reviews I've done. Moon, Rich and the Good, Planet Unknown, Mindbug, you know, not even just the Expo stuff, but all the other backlog of games I've had to do. Plenty of content on this show so far and plenty more to come. And of course, get your comments down below. You know, do you have experience with the main board game this was based on? What are your thoughts on this? You know, do you know of any other games that use this whole your deck is everything in the game mechanic? Because I certainly want to know more of them. I know of San Juan, this one, and Race for the Galaxy are the three that immediately come to mind. Any others you can think of, let us all know. I'd love to read about them. But until next time, remember, regardless of whether the game is themed about trains or not, it's still only a game and it can still be a solid one. Take care and bye for now.